one of the bugbears of digital, which is distribution, which has always been, of course, as I started by saying, it is the story that I've been writing now for 25 years, is the ways in which digital essentially dislocated media as we've known it from its context and from its control of distribution and experience. And that's really, you know, when the history of this is written in 20, 30 years, that will be where it started, was the dislocation of and the untethering of media from its context and even from circumstance. And so understanding where we are in that process of rethinking, always rethinking distribution, as of course those major channels are always in a constant state of motion, responding to themselves, to industry pressures, to news events, to their own revenue streams, is what we want to talk about here, and especially how two very different companies are coming at distribution. Let me ask Noah and Andy to introduce themselves, and in doing, outline very quickly how what your distribution plan is for your. In your case, no, it's multiple brands, but just very quickly outline what your main distribution channels are.
Sure. I'm Noah. I'm SVP of Strategic Growth and Insights at Group 9 Media. We're a newly formed holding company we've been around for about 2.5 years. We have 4 brands that we primarily focus on: Thrillist, The Dodo, Now This News, and Seeker. And we have distribution across O&O, so you know our websites, email, direct touch points with audiences. We are very active on all the major social platforms, so the big 5 as we refer to them: Facebook, YouTube, Snapchat, Instagram, Twitter. And then we do a lot of syndication and licensing of our content to about 20 to 25 platforms. The Oaths of the world, Amazon, ByteDance, you know, a few things that we've heard before. And we also attack a lot of emerging platforms, which I know we'll get into later, things like TikTok.
Okay. Go ahead, Andy.
I'm Andy Sullivan from Al Jazeera. I oversee our digital content distribution and monetization partnerships. Al Jazeera is a global news organization. We're headquartered in Qatar. We have kind of our legacy business, which is 3 24-hour news networks that broadcast globally. And then digitally, we've got our 2 major platforms, which are Al Jazeera English and Al Jazeera Arabic, but we also have a digital first brand called AJ Plus, which is in English, Arabic, French, and Spanish. Our digital distribution is kind of all across the board. You know, we've got our apps and our websites, which we rely on heavily, but we also rely very heavily on the social media platforms for a lot of our traffic. You know, we do dabble in the Google News, Yahoo, Apple, Flipboards of the world, but really we see the bulk of our digital traffic coming from social media. So that's really where we're investing a lot of our time and efforts.
Not search?
No, I mean, search is definitely big, but we're not, you know, we probably don't have the right, we haven't put a lot of time into our websites and our apps. And that's something that's changing now. So we spent probably the last 3 years really focusing on social media distribution because of the reach that it had, probably sacrificing engagement because of that. So we're really now trying to invest in bulking up our websites for more search traffic.
How about search for you? Because one of the things that I saw a couple of years ago in response to Facebook radically reorienting its algorithms away from publishers' content was a flight to search and a much greater reliance on search as a response.
Sure. So for us, our biggest O&O is Thrillist, and about 2 years ago, I would say about 60% of our traffic was coming from social, and that's flipped to about 60% is coming from search today. So we've made a very big concerted effort to make sure that we're continuing to drive, you know, audience and scale to our O&O, and particularly for local. That kind of content has played really well in the search algorithms versus, you know, a lot of the social platforms are built for shareability and content that has to work at scale and nationally. So for Thrillist in particular, we've seen huge growth on the search side. And then when it comes to our other brands, we're just starting to focus on O&O growth, you know, similar to what Andy was saying here, and we have some good early signs that search is going to be really important to that.
What have been the major shifts for both of you? What have been the major changes over the last year in terms of where you're acquiring new customers?
Go ahead. Sure. Yeah. So as I said, for O&O, search has definitely taken the lion's share away from social. For
all SEO, by the way, or are you doing SEM?
Mostly SEO. I'd say
Okay.
99%
Okay.
SEO and AMP as well as part of that.
Right.
On the social side, because we have 4 brands that are pretty distinct, our focus the last year or 2 has really been diversifying audiences. So, Seeker really grew up on YouTube. They have a heavy audience on YouTube. How do we expand them into places like Snapchat or Facebook or Instagram? The Dodo and Now This grew up when Facebook video was taking off, and they have huge scale there. So how do we reduce the reliance on that platform? So we've also seen a big shift trying to just diversify audiences, utilize our content across platforms much more than just building specifically for one environment. And then on the syndication side, because we've built a bigger and bigger library of IP and scalable content and episodic content, we've seen a lot of success with just the ability to distribute to more platforms through syndication.
Okay.
Yeah, and I think that we're seeing a really big shift away from Facebook and into YouTube and Instagram. Our AJ Plus brand, which is digital first, made its name and its bread and butter creating viral videos, news-based viral videos on Facebook. But now they've dedicated most of their resources to YouTube because they're finding that they can get more engagement with users. Yes, they're not reaching tens of millions of users with every single video, but they're getting more interaction with it, they're getting more view time with it, and that's something that we're valuing more these days as opposed to a couple of years ago. And I think one of the things that Noah hit on is kind of cross-platform distribution and really not making anything bespoke for a single platform. And that's something that I think that we've all made mistakes on in the past and kind of pigeonholed ourselves into a single platform. And now when we look at video production especially, we're looking to produce that in all formats so that it can run anywhere. And then if there's a particular platform that takes off, we can move resources into that. But 90% of our video production now is cross-platform.
So you're actually anticipating my next question, which is what we've learned over the last few years and how you've adjusted to this world where we've seen the major platforms sort of dangle out even some high-priced incentives to content providers to develop and help them develop a new platform like a Facebook Watch or even some of YouTube's channels. And I'm curious what we've learned and how your relationships have changed to the platforms as a result of all of this over the last couple of years.
You know, I think even the platforms, when you speak to them now as opposed to a couple of years ago when they wanted exclusive content, they're telling us, especially as a news organization, to diversify. And I think that that's them really hedging their bets against the fake news epidemic and things like that because they don't want to wade into it. They would rather us not be as dependent on those platforms. So when we're looking at things now, we're not looking at, how many views we can get on Facebook and how many shares and likes. We're looking at really that view time and engagement time and which platforms can give us that as opposed to that pure reach.
Mm-hmm. I'd say it's pretty similar for us. We've definitely shifted a lot of our KPIs to higher engagement, time spent over the last 2 years, which has naturally shifted some of our focus areas to places like YouTube. Thinking specifically to kind of some of the new offerings that some of these platforms have had, something like Facebook Watch. We certainly aren't afraid to participate in those things, but if it's going to be for exclusive content, we obviously want to have some sort of upfront guarantee so we can get licensing revenue. Otherwise, we really want to build content that we can have live in multiple places. We can own the IP. So we still have really strong relationships with a lot of platforms. We still get a lot of scale on certain platforms, but we're not as focused on just specifically building for a new product if it's only going to live in that space.
So in addition to the platforms recognizing, look, diversify your revenue, don't depend on us. Are they also recognizing and dealing with you these KPIs of engagement, that you're going after something different from traffic now?
Definitely. Again, Facebook Watch is a good example. The way that they were valuing, shows that they were investing in, things that they were picking up was a lot less the kind of the top scale vanity metrics of the 3-second views. They wanted loyalty. They wanted people who could build episodic shows that they could keep coming back to, people who were willing to market to these things. You could see it with the shows that they themselves are pushing, very heavily, the Steph Curry shows and Tom Brady. They want kind of tune in, really active viewing and not necessarily passive. So in some sense, I think that they've kind of adjusted to understanding what we as publishers are pushing for. Again, it depends on the exact use case. Instagram's a great example where there is not a clear path to monetization outside of working with an advertiser and, branded content and native advertising. So that, Instagram still understands its place right now is providing scale for reach on those kind of campaigns. So, it's a little bit case by case there, but I think, even something like a Snapchat, they're more and more focused on time spent, retention, building shows that can have individual subscriber bases as opposed to just kind of top level scale of views.
And I'm sorry, go ahead.
Definitely,
Yeah,
I just
go ahead.
wanted to mention kind of Facebook is really pushing conversation around video. They're pushing watch parties. They're pushing groups. They don't just want one video to come out, people comment on it and go away. They want to create conversation around things, which we think is great going forward as we look to create new content. We want to create groups around that content, whether it be a series on the environment or a series on food. We're starting to set up Facebook groups around those things, set up more kind of anticipation for new episodes, more discussion around those episodes that we're moderating within those groups. And we've found, it's very early in it, but we've found it very successful.
Are any of them yet, and I'm not sure this would apply to Al Jazeera yet, but I think it would apply to some of your brands. Are any of the social platforms amenable to the affiliate revenue, and you trying to leverage their platform to increase your e-commerce? Because we've seen, I think actually Bonnie and I are going to talk about this a little bit tomorrow, that there are some of the platforms that are actually devaluing some e-commerce attached content.
Sure. So we are this year we've actually put a big effort back into commerce and affiliate, and we are finding that we can successfully, move audience through the purchase funnel out of places like, Facebook or YouTube. Instagram is just, really heavily investing in a lot of commerce, shoppability, not necessarily for publishers in day one, but they have indicated that's where they're hoping that moves. So I don't know that every platform is fully looking for you to push people off platform and monetize without their ability to kind of participate, but YouTube's a great example where there's a lot of videos or opportunities for product placement. You can have shoppable links in descriptions, and we haven't found that they've penalized us as long as we're making content where people are engaging on the platform itself.
Are you doing any of this?
No.
No, okay.
People don't really want to buy the stuff that's in our videos.
But, right, that's right. But you feel that Instagram is actually kind of giving you a roadmap where you can see more clearly where this is going to lead. That we know that they already are starting to play with a shopping component, and this could translate to the publishers that work with them.
Definitely. Yeah, I think Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, there's clear paths there. I think it's a little bit different with Snapchat because it is a little bit more of a closed-off ecosystem for publishers, but again, they have a lot of advertisers that swipe up to app installs, and so I don't think it's a crazy thing that we'll see in the future that there'll be ability to drive affiliate through Snapchat. Twitter, I think, is a little bit more difficult because it's such a heavy news environment that I don't know that that's their focus is around affiliate per se, but we'll see.
Before I want to drill into some examples in a second, but before we do, I need to at least make a nod to my own too cute by halves title for this of Apple Minus. The Apple Plus platform sort of comes in, it imported the texture business that Apple bought and brought with it that notion that we'll do genuine rev share on membership. I don't know if either of you, I didn't even ask you guys, either of you are in Apple Plus, but what do you think of the model?
Apple's one of the low-hanging fruits that we haven't quite picked yet. I think there's a huge opportunity in it. We have a kind of an install base there already with just basic RSS feeds that's in the millions that we can leverage at any time. So we're looking to do that, and we're looking at Apple Plus as well. From our perspective, I look at Apple Plus and I see it as something a little bit more geared towards traditional print publishers and less video publishers. As we're trying to get out there and push more video because we do have a plethora of video content, it doesn't seem to be as natural as a platform as IGTV or something else. So we're kind of taking a wait-and-see approach on some of that.
We're pretty similar. The only thing I kind of would add is that, the amount of people that have an iPhone in their hand every day, we do feel that Apple, if they ever figure out or crack a specific nut for monetization, they have such a large user base that it is a place that a lot of publishers are going to have to play in and understand. Whether or not Apple Plus is specifically kind of the best way to monetize moving forward, I'm not really sure because I think it's a little bit more top of the funnel right now of just They just have so many users. If they can push people into one of these environments, it can be a good top of funnel play. But I'm a little bit skeptical as far as them kind of really having a real subscription business that helps publishers.
Yeah, all the other platforms have a long reputation of having screwed everybody over. Apple's case is we just kind of are complacent when it comes to media.
It's a wait and screw.
Yeah, it's a wait and screw. Eventually we're going to get around to screwing you. We haven't thought about it hard enough yet to figure out how. Let's talk about some hard examples. Andy, give us an example of a distribution program from where, and the KPIs that you attach to it that have worked especially well, especially in through monetization.
Sure. I think that we're a very immature organization as far as digital monetization is concerned. Al Jazeera gets its money from a grant from the Qatari government, so we haven't always had to make money, but what we found is that when we make money, platforms like us more. They give us more opportunities, and then we can also fund our innovation a little bit better with it. So I don't have any great examples, but going forward, we are producing more episodic shows that are geared towards a real 360 experience with monetization as the forefront. One of the ones we're producing that's coming out in the fall is a show called Fork the System, which is a little bit off-brand for us because it's not hard news. It's going into various countries and seeing how food can be affected by geopolitical influences. How hummus is different in Israel than it is in the Middle East, and why that is. So things like that. And what we're looking to do is really create a 360 experience around it that tells users about it on Facebook, drives them into YouTube for full episodes, has supplementary content on IGTV, drives back to Facebook for a conversation. So it lends well to sponsorship. So we've already started engaging our sponsors that we talk to regularly, but we're also talking to the platforms as well to see if they want to go, kind of co-present this in market. And we've gotten some good feedback on it. So we're very bullish on it, but again, we're extremely immature as far as the monetization.
So you're thinking of and want to play with their sales teams?
Yeah,
rather than against
think,
it, or simply go direct yourself.
We don't have a huge sales team. We have one salesperson in the United States. So it's something where if we want to tap into that market, we need to use partners for that, and they're becoming more amenable to those things.
Now, knowing Group 9, you guys have a multitude of brands. So tell us a little bit about how the distribution strategies vary. Brands with very different audiences in some cases. How the distribution, give us a couple of examples of how the distribution strategy really varies from brand to brand.
Sure. So as I mentioned a little bit earlier, each of the brands has a little bit of a different kind of ethos from where they began. So Seeker was a YouTube-first science channel, very hardcore science audience. YouTube plays really well for that type of content. You can get a lot deeper engagement. You can have a lot more time spent on any individual video or topic. So they started there. Now This and Dodo came up in kind of that revolution of sort of where AJ Plus came out of, the quick turn videos for Facebook. They were two of the early Discover channels on Snapchat, and they were fully kind of in that distributed high scale environment. Mm-hmm. And Thrillist was actually birthed about 15 years ago out of an email newsletter. So their background is very much email, O&O, local content, local distribution. So when we formed Group 9 about 2.5 years ago, we definitely have had some learnings where I'd say the first year or so, we really thought that we would see the kind of best in class for each of these brands in their areas would, rise, all tides would rise. And we ended up kind of moving a little bit off the mark for where the brands really excelled when we were trying to say, Now This and Dodo have massive scale on Snapchat. We need to get Thrillist and Seeker on there. They need to build scale there really quickly. We have huge audiences. We're selling into them. We have a lot of success in the ad sales market against those channels. And the last year and a half, I think we learned a lot that wasn't necessarily the best way forward. The editorial teams are individual and structured differently. And the distribution strategy should be really leaning into what they do well. Of course, we can pair learnings and spread learnings really quickly. We can negotiate together against the platforms. We can do ad sales deals that go across the brand. So there's definitely advantages to working really closely together. But from a distribution perspective, it makes a lot more sense for Seeker to focus on mid-form shows and licensing that content to Amazon and building it first for YouTube, than trying to build an O&O when one doesn't exist. And it's going to take a lot of resources. It took 15 years of investment for Thrills to get to that space. Same thing with Now This, and Now This is a great example. They are just getting into YouTube. We're just starting to invest in O&O because it makes a lot of sense for the news space, but they're continuing to pour fuel on the fire where they have a lot of success with Facebook, with Instagram, with Twitter, where news is a really great place to play, versus Thrillist, where Twitter isn't really a really great environment for them. Long-winded way of saying, I think we have a pretty specific approach for each brand, and we try and pass learnings across the board, but we're not trying to force everybody to be on every single platform.
Well, then how do you organize that internally? What are the shared resources, and what are the ones that are pushed out towards the individual brands?
Sure. So we have the team that I sit on. We're a central insights team, and we all came from one of the brands. So a lot of us came from Thrills, a lot of us came from Now This. We had been running our own various audience development teams, or research teams, or insights teams, or data and analytics, and we just realized that there was a lot of overlap in work when it came to data infrastructure. We have 130,000 minutes of consumption in a given day that we can be analyzing across all these platforms, across all these brands. So we strategically centralized the insights, the data, and the analytics, but we still have on the ground audience development people that are taking the strategies we're putting together and operationalizing them. And then we have all our content creators still and editorial teams focused specifically on their brands. Mm-hmm. And then we've centralized pretty much everything else. So sales is centralized. However, we do have sellers who are more focused on maybe a regional account in Detroit that has a lot more success with Thrillist. We centralized HR, we centralized finance, we centralized our studios and licensing business, but we've really focused on keeping specifically the editorial, content creation, and day-to-day optimization at the brand level.
Who has the connection to the platform itself? Where does that live?
So the way that we've structured the relationships just kind of happened organically over time. We generally have one person who is the lead, and it could be, for instance, with Snapchat.
By platform or by brand?
By platform.
By platform. Okay.
So take Snapchat, for instance, we've had a very long-standing relationship with Snapchat with the Dodo. They've had a really great channel and have now many channels and curated and shows. And so the president of the Dodo actually owns the relationship across the entire company with Snapchat. And then we have someone on our team, one or two people will own the day-to-day. If there's a new tool or something that we want to be testing, we'll work with the brands to kind of roll that out. And then the brands can just focus on, the editorial teams can just focus on the content. They don't have to worry about what does Facebook want us to do today. We'll have, kind of one person at the top oversee the strategic relationship and a couple people operationalize it.
So you have internal experts who essentially are expert on a channel.
Yes.
And so they can then better judge and inform which brands really are appropriate here in what form.
Sure. And when new things come up, something like IGTV, we have our top person who is getting information that it's coming, understands what kind of Instagram is looking to see. We have our experts on our team who are Instagram experts who understand, this could make a lot of sense for Seeker. They're doing a tabletop science show that would play really well for teenagers. It seems like that's the kind of thing that may work in IGTV. Let's start to test it and get it out the door.
Andy, how are you organizing this?
Yeah, it's similar to what Noah was talking about. We have a centralized organization that really is in charge of the communication, monetization, strategy around how we're approaching all of our distribution partners. And then we have the individual brands who are creating content for those partners, doing audience development, really understanding how they can utilize the platforms. So, at any given time, we've probably got 9 or 10 different teams creating content for social media. And historically, they were all speaking individually to these companies. So we'd have 8 different people talking to Facebook and whatever it might be. And those organizations started to see us as a bunch of smaller media organizations with 10 to 15 million followers, as opposed to a global news organization with 100 million followers. So that's why we centralize things, and we think that we can take advantage of opportunities better as an entire group than as individuals. But at the end of the day, the individuals that are creating the content that are close to the users understand how to engage those users much better than we do in kind of a centralized organization. So we don't want to be a stopgap for communication. We want to facilitate communication on an editorial level, but take away or kind of ease their burden on that strategic level, the monetization level, the new opportunity level, and centralize that so we can send things out across the organization.
I want to talk about a persistent problem in this distributed age, and that's converting into into brand loyalists and direct traffic, because that became a priority as we started seeing the social platforms jiggle their algorithms. One of the other themes was generate and grow your direct audience, but one of the challenges with social traffic especially, and search traffic, has always been it tended to be shallow, is that it was hard to convert. They tended to be one and done. What have we learned about converting this distributed traffic into brand loyalists and direct traffic?
Sure.
Yeah,
so it certainly is not easy, to your point. You know, there's probably a few different approaches for us. So the first thing is, especially when we're talking about video content, we're really trying to make content that drives a loyal behavior. So episodic content that you would want to tune in each week, building IP that really has an audience around it, a fan base around. You know, there's several shows we've launched in the last year or two where we are really monitoring that people are coming back, watching multiple episodes that are, you know, there's key metrics we're looking at that we probably didn't look at 2 or 3 years ago. You know, the frequency of how many of a specific series an individual user is watching in a given month, how often a daily active user, you know, what is our daily active user over monthly active user rate looking like, which is a more kind of traditional app metric. Mm-hmm. So the content itself is something that we're focusing on that will drive a more loyal behavior. And then there are sort of high touch point, but probably low, you know, low scale things. So IRL experiential is definitely something that Thrillist has had a lot of success with that we're just starting to roll out across the other brands. So Dodo is going to have Best Dog Day Ever, which everybody should go to. We'll be touring it around the country. But those are things where it's not going to be millions of people that come out, but we're trying to convert, you know, 1,000 people that come to an event to become really brand advocates.
Yeah.
Conversion of users has been historically a very weak part of our strategy. You know, we were focusing on reach, focusing on getting things out there, focusing on getting things viral, really to spread our content as far as we possibly could. So as we started to bring things back, you know, I talked about we need to update our websites, we need to update our apps to really encourage more return users and more loyalty. But in parallel, editorially, similar to what Noah was talking about, we've changed lengths of videos. So we've increased video length from what was normally, you know, 30 to 50 seconds is now 3 to 10 minutes. Which increases engagement. We're creating more episodic content, which is increasing engagement. We're trying to create that conversation around content right now on other platforms, but with an eye to bringing it into our own platform eventually. So it's a work in progress, but it's definitely something that we've got an eye on.
I want to wrap before we go to questions, and I do expect questions. I want to talk about some of the emerging platforms you're playing on, because in our discussions, you guys are experimenting and teasing out some new platforms I thought were interesting. Andy, you're already trying both VR and smart speakers, right? Why don't you tell us a little bit about what you're learning in the smart speaker space?
Sure, good, because I didn't want to talk about VR.
Yeah, all right.
Smart speakers are something we're extremely bullish on, and audio in general is something that we're very bullish on. And back to your last question, we feel that audio is a great way to create loyal users because it's something that they can engage with in the morning, they can engage with on their commute, they can engage with when they come home, and in a very lean-back environment, especially with smart speakers. The issue that we've been having with smart speakers is just a lack of data and a lack of intelligence into how well other publishers are doing on the platforms as well. So it's kind of a little bit of a blind faith right now, but we've had great success with it. And what started out...
What format, by the way? Just give us an example of how you're using it.
So initially we were creating a daily news brief that was distributed on Alexa and on Google Home. And that was one person sitting in the Middle East creating it and distributing it on a daily basis. That's turned into an entire audio organization that's now doing twice daily news briefs for smart speakers, also doing podcasts that are weekly right now, but turning into daily in both Arabic and English, multiple podcasts, and seeing great success. And that team's really looking at that entire audio strategy. And not just smart speakers, but where podcasts fit in and how distributing you know, a 2-minute news brief that's built for smart speakers, distributing it on a podcast platform, and how that works. And these are things that we're all very early in, but again, we're extremely bullish on. And for us, you know, historically kind of a slow-moving media organization, we see it as an opportunity to get out in front of something. So we might not see the numbers today, especially when we're comparing it to other digital distribution channels. It looks tiny and it looks like something that, you know, we should be running away from, but it's increasing, and it's increasing those loyal users. So we're optimistic about it.
You're on TikTok. First of all, does everybody know what TikTok is?
Barely.
Just all right. One brief. Give us the brief rundown and tell us how you're using it.
Sure. So it's a short form kind of video distribution, viral, 15 seconds or less. Generally speaking, people are more or less doing very lo-fi things on their phone. They're pairing it with music and then usually trending challenges. So kind of hashtags and things that are trending, and then a lot of people jump on them. You could kind of think of like the Ice Bucket Challenge, had that existed when TikTok was big, would be one of those types of things. We have been diving into that recently the last couple months. So we saw a huge audience there. We've actually, so they're owned by ByteDance. We've worked with ByteDance historically, and ByteDance is a massive company. You know, they have more employees globally than Facebook. And so we knew that they were pushing this heavily, and they are, and it was the most downloaded app in the US in I think Q4 of last year. So there's a huge audience of, you know, teenagers who are starting to download the app. They're using it heavily. For us, that meant we should start to experiment and see what made sense in the platform. So it's definitely early days for us, but we have been experimenting with 3 of our brands, trying to just understand workflow, get a kind of an early indication of how we can play into some of these trends and challenges, understanding what kind of analytics we have, how do we start to grow an audience, and then for us, how do we start to bring brand advertisers into something like this? Because TikTok is, if you use the app, they actually are doing a pretty decent job of getting ad sponsorship. Even today, when you open it, there's a full app takeover. And they've done things recently that have really taken off, like Chipotle had a challenge that they sponsored that got millions and millions of teenagers using it. So for us, we just saw an opportunity. We saw a huge audience around something, and we wanted to get in there, learn, see if there was something that made sense, and try and get ahead of the curve, as Andy was saying. So we're not, in 2 years, if this is something huge, we didn't want to be starting from scratch.
What? Let's see. Questions from the audience.
It's almost lunch.
Okay. I got a lightning round. Let's finish with a lightning round. Very quickly, give me your response to each of these channels and how they are, both these platforms, how they're performing for you and how you're monetizing them, or whether you are monetizing them. Search.
Performing well, big scale, and monetizing through O&O.
Oh, no.
I think performing well. We're monetizing through AMP. I think we see some early success with AMP stories, so we're starting to put more resources towards that.
Facebook. Where are you with Facebook?
Still getting a lot of scale, but not quite where we were when we were more heavily focusing on it. And we've had good success with revenue there.
Yeah, it's necessary for reach and for promotion. I think we're trying to drive people to other platforms where we can monetize better, but we have had some success monetizing there, and we'll continue to make content to monetize there.
Both
less success monetizing Facebook than other channels?
We've done pretty well with the mid-roll ad program because we have such scale. The crux of our revenue is still ad sales, branded content, native advertising, and we can seed a lot of that through Facebook for scale. So I think in that sense we've done well, and then we've also we had 5 shows that were licensed by Facebook for Facebook Watch, so we're actually generally pretty happy.
Okay.
Yeah, and I think to segue to your next one, we see probably the most monetization on YouTube and the most engagement on it because we do have longer view times. We haven't done a ton of watch shows. We probably have 4 or 5 that have been mildly successful, and we haven't really monetized them yet. So I can't speak as well to that, but I think that we see a lot more potential in YouTube monetization.
YouTube.
YouTube, we're just starting to build bigger scale across the org, so the scale from that sense isn't quite huge for us yet. But yeah, the the kind of the monetization per viewer, per minute spent has been
But
good.
for both of you, monetizing YouTube through direct?
No.
No, you're not. You're
Through
not?
Google sales.
You are really,
Yeah.
and you're making money on it.
Yes.
Good for you.
I mean, we're probably making 40
God
cents
bless
on the
you.
dollar, but it's better than zero.
Okay.
For us, we get programmatic from the Google side. We've sold in a bit, but we really think that'll be a big area of growth for us. And then we've had sponsored shows that we've gotten money that we've run on multiple channels, including YouTube.
Instagram.
Growing scale, particularly stories and IGTV, that we feel really good about, and we're hopeful monetization will come.
You're doing a daily news report on IGTV, right?
No, we're doing, so we do put out kind of recuts. We have a daily show that is part of the Facebook news program on Watch with Now This, and then
Okay.
we'll repurpose some of that for Instagram stories.
Okay, because that's what I'm seeing, I think.
Yeah, I think Instagram's a great platform where the users that we really want to engage with are. So we're investing a lot more into it. Monetization for us right now is zero, but we're looking to create a little bit more of that branded content relationship so that we can monetize it better. And eventually it will plug into the Facebook ad network, so it's just not there yet.
And finally, Snapchat.
We've had pretty good success. We've had very good success with
Well, you were
scale.
you were partnering with him. I mean, you were
Yes.
doing Discover programming.
Yep,
right?
so we've got 3 Discover editions, 2 curated editions. Now this is the only breaking news channel on Snapchat, and I think we have up to maybe 12 shows at this point. So we have a very large scale of audience. We do really well from just like the passive programmatic ad revenue we make there, and we're hopeful that advertisers will start to come in a little bit more heavily for direct sales into the channels.
Do you have any evidence that brand building that you're doing for Now This on Snapchat is translating into YouTube recognition? Or
Not necessarily directly from Snapchat to YouTube. We definitely are seeing our Now This audience can skew. We can get a lot of new audience through Snapchat because it skews so much younger than, say, YouTube or Facebook. So in that sense, I think it is helping building branding in that way. But we're actually revisioning a lot of the shows that we run on YouTube. We're running them separately on Snapchat. We're finding different audiences. We're finding different levels of success depending on kind of the nature of the show. So I think for us, it's just kind of a different audience bucket.
okay. Are you doing Snapchat? at all?
We had some political disagreements with Snapchat, so we're not.
Well, do tell. Do tell.
I don't know. Do you want to get into Middle Eastern politics or? No, we had some great success with Snapchat early. We had basically the first Discover channel in the Middle East, Arabic language, that was doing great, and it was killing it. I mean, like really doing well. But they got pressure from their Saudi investors to shut it down because it's coming from a free voice in the Middle East that isn't necessarily nice to the dictatorial regimes in some of these countries. So they pressured Snapchat and they shut it down. And it was a campaign that we started a campaign after that really about freedom of the press and being able to get our voice out there because it is important. It's a very important voice in the Middle East, especially to people who aren't getting the news content that they necessarily need to get. So long story short, or long story long, we're not investing too heavily in Snapchat right now.
Andy, Noah, thanks very much, guys.
Thank you.